The interrogation chamber smelled like burnt ozone and regret. Commander Vral'keth of the Dominion Intelligence Corps sat across from the human prisoner, all four of his eye stalks focused on the creature that had just destroyed an entire battlecruiser with nothing but duct tape, a fire extinguisher, and what he called pure spite. Let me understand this correctly, Vral'keth began, his translator struggling with the concept. You disabled our gravitational stabilizers by jamming frozen waste material into the exhaust ports. The human, who'd introduced himself simply as Marcus Flynn, leaned back in his restraints and grinned. That expression. That terrifying display of teeth that meant either happiness or imminent violence. Sometimes both. Well, yeah. Your ships have a design flaw the size of a cargo bay. Any idiot with basic physics knowledge could have told you that. But I guess when you've got tentacles and superiority complexes, you skip the whole peer review thing, huh? Vral'keth's scales rippled with irritation. 3 months. 3 months since the Dominion had declared war on humanity, expecting an easy victory over a species that had barely achieved faster than light travel. 3 months of watching their carefully planned strategies dissolve into absolute madness. Your vessel was a cargo transport, Vral'keth continued, pulling up the holographic records. Class 4. Minimal armament. No shields. You were surrounded by 12 of our fighters. Explain how you survived. Marcus tilted his head, and Vral'keth noticed the scar running down his left cheek. Fresh? Probably from last week's incident at Station Helix 7. See, that's the thing about you guys. You think in patterns. Predictable, efficient, logical patterns. It's beautiful, really. Like watching a perfectly programmed dance. He paused, that grin widening. Right up until someone throws a chair into the orchestra pit. That is not an explanation. Sure it is. You had me boxed in, standard formation. Probably ran that same maneuver 1,000 times against other species. Works great when everyone plays by the rules. Marcus leaned forward as much as his restraints allowed. But humans? We didn't get the rulebook. Lost it somewhere between inventing the wheel and figuring out nuclear fusion. So when your fighters came at me in that pretty little pattern, I just didn't do what you expected. Vral'keth pulled up the tactical footage. Watching it again made his chromatic sax pulse with confusion. The human cargo ship had suddenly vented its entire atmosphere, spinning wildly as the expelled oxygen created thrust in unpredictable directions. Then, impossibly, it had accelerated directly into the debris field from a nearby asteroid mining operation. The Dominion fighters, following their training, had attempted to track and maintain formation. Point 3 had collided with each other. Point 4 more had been struck by debris the human had somehow calculated would be in exactly the right position. The remaining 5 had been so disoriented by the erratic movements that they'd actually fired on each other before realizing their mistake. You could have died, Vral'keth said flatly. Yeah, probably. But here's the fun part. I did die. Technically. For about 40 seconds. Turns out, vacuum exposure isn't instantly fatal if you're too stubborn to accept it. Marcus shrugged. Got myself back inside, patched the hull with emergency sealant and prayer, and limped to the nearest station. Your guys were too embarrassed to follow. This was the problem. This was always the problem with humans. Vral'keth had interrogated 17 human prisoners over the past month. Soldiers, civilians, even a chef who'd somehow reprogrammed a food synthesizer to produce acidic compounds that ate through bulkhead plating. Each one had the same insane quality. They looked at certain death and said, yeah, but what if I just don't? Tell me about spite, Vral'keth demanded. Your species references it constantly. What tactical advantage does it provide? Marcus actually laughed. A genuine, belly-deep sound that made the guards near the door shift uncomfortably. Spite isn't a tactic, Commander. It's a philosophy. It's waking up and deciding that the universe doesn't get to tell you what's possible. It's looking at impossible odds and saying watch me anyway. Your species optimizes for efficiency and logic. We optimize for being too dumb to quit and too angry to die quietly. That is irrational. Completely. And that's exactly why it works against you. Marcus's expression shifted, becoming serious for the first time. You want to know humanity's deadliest weapon? It's not our ships, or our guns, or even our insane pilots. It's that we genuinely do not care about your carefully calculated probabilities of our survival. We've been fighting gravity, weather, predators, diseases, and each other for millions of years. Your invasion. It's just Tuesday. Vral'keth felt a chill run through his cerebral cortex. The human wasn't bragging. He was simply stating facts. What about improvisation? Vral'keth asked, pulling up another file. You mentioned it in your initial statement. Ah, yeah. That's the other half of the equation. Marcus settled back, looking almost relaxed despite being in a high-security detention cell. You guys plan everything. I've seen your tactical databases. Scenario after scenario, all mapped out, all predicted. It's impressive, genuinely. But what happens when something occurs that's not in the database? We adapt our existing protocols. Wrong. You hesitate. You analyze. You try to fit the new situation into an old framework. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Meanwhile, humans just grab whatever's nearby and start hitting things until something works. Remember the incident at Colony 12? Vral'keth did remember. A human settlement under siege by Dominion ground forces. Complete tactical superiority. Victory calculated at 97.4% probability. The humans had lost in the first hour. Then they'd started adapting. Agricultural equipment became improvised armored vehicles. Irrigation systems became chemical weapon delivery mechanisms. The colony's children, evacuated to the underground shelters, had apparently hacked into the Dominion communication network using nothing but spare parts from broken tablets, and had started broadcasting misleading orders. The siege had lasted 3 weeks before the Dominion forces retreated, suffering 60% casualties. Your commander there made a critical error, Marcus continued. He thought he was fighting an organized military force. He wasn't. He was fighting a bunch of farmers, teachers, and mechanics who decided they'd rather die standing than live kneeling. And when you're that committed, you start seeing weapons everywhere. Fertilizer becomes explosives. Mirrors become laser reflectors. Entertainment systems become sensor jammers. This should not be possible, Vral'keth muttered, more to himself than to the prisoner. And yet. Marcus spread his hands as much as the restraints allowed. Here we are. You've got superior technology, superior numbers, superior tactics. And you're losing ground every single day. Want to know why? Vral'keth didn't answer, but his silence was acknowledgement enough. Because war isn't about having the best equipment, or the perfect strategy. It's about will. It's about who wants it more. And humans. Marcus's grin returned, sharp and dangerous. We're really, really good at wanting things. Especially when someone tells us we can't have them. An alarm suddenly blared through the facility. Vral'keth's communication implant activated immediately. Commander, we have a breach in Sector 7. Multiple human vessels approaching at high velocity. They're not responding to hails and their trajectory is, sir, they're on a collision course with the station. Vral'keth looked at Marcus, whose expression had shifted to something almost pitying. Let me guess, the human said calmly. You thought capturing me would give you intel on human tactics. Didn't occur to you that maybe I let myself get caught. The realization hit Vral'keth like a plasma bolt to his central nervous system. You're the distraction. Bingo. And judging by that alarm, my crew just finished cutting through your exterior defenses. Should be reaching this section in about, 3 minutes. Maybe 4 if they stopped for coffee. They do love their coffee. We have 4,000 troops on this station. Yeah. Marcus's grin was absolutely feral now. They have 12 people, 6 ships held together with optimism and welding scars, and a really intense desire to not leave me behind. I'd say those are pretty even odds. The station shuddered. Explosions echoed from somewhere distant. Vral'keth stood, his diplomatic composure cracking. This is suicide. You cannot possibly hope to extract a prisoner from a military installation of this size. Can't we? Marcus asked, and there was something ancient and terrifying in his voice now. Commander, you've spent months studying humans, trying to understand what makes us dangerous. But you missed the most important thing. Which is? The chamber door exploded inward. Smoke and debris filled the air. Through it emerged humans. 12 of them, just as Marcus had said. Covered in improvised armor, carrying weapons that looked like they'd been assembled from parts scavenged from 10 different species technologies. Leading them was a woman with bright red hair and an expression that suggested she was having the time of her life. We don't leave our people behind, Marcus said softly. Ever. The woman with red hair, who wore a jacket that seemed to be half leather and half solar panel stitching, surveyed the interrogation chamber with the casual confidence of someone evaluating a breakfast menu. Hey Marcus, she said, not even breathing hard despite presumably fighting through 4,000 Dominion troops. You look terrible. They feed you at all in this dump? Hi Petra. Yeah, the cuisine here is pretty lacking. 1 star, would not recommend. Marcus flexed against his restraints. These things magnetic or mechanical? Magnetic. A shorter human, built like a cargo container and covered in burn scars, stepped forward with some kind of handheld device that sparked ominously. Give me 5 seconds. Take your time, Rook. Not like we're in a heavily fortified enemy station, or anything. Vral'keth watched in horrified fascination, as the restraints simply fell away. His guards had their weapons raised, but none of them fired. Something about the way these humans moved, the way they held themselves, transmitted a very clear message. Shooting would start something that nobody in this room would survive. Commander, Petra addressed Vral'keth directly, still smiling that terrifying smile. I'm going to need you to step aside. We're leaving now, and you can either let us walk out, or we can improvise our exit. Trust me when I say you don't want us to improvise. You are surrounded by thousands of soldiers, Vral'keth managed, trying to reassert control of the situation. Your vessels are outnumbered 50-1. Surrender now, and I will ensure your treatment is humane. Petra looked at Marcus. Marcus looked at Rook. Rook looked at a tall, thin human who was casually eating something from a ration pack, while holding a weapon that appeared to be 3 different guns welded together. Then they all started laughing. Oh man, Marcus said, standing and stretching like he'd just woken from a nap. You really don't get it, do you? Commander, let me introduce you to the crew of the Defiant gesture. Petra Kavanaugh, pilot and the only reason we're not a debris field. Rook Thompson, engineer/demolitions expert/person, who once built a functioning reactor from a broken coffee maker. That's Del Santos over there, our tactical officer, who got bored during the approach and apparently brought snacks. Del Santos waved cheerfully, mouth full. Behind you, Marcus continued, that's the Miyazaki twins, Hiro and Keiko. Communications and electronic warfare. They're the reason your entire sensor grid has been showing false readings for the past hour. The big guy with the shield is Pavel Volkov, security. The one checking her fingernails is Dr. Amara Okafor, our medic, which seems casual until you realize she's mentally cataloging every weak point in your biology while looking bored. Each human nodded or waved as they were introduced. They looked nothing like a military unit. Their equipment was mismatched. Their armor showed signs of repair and modification. One of them was literally wearing what appeared to be kitchen pot on their shoulder as improvised plating. They also looked utterly, completely unafraid. And the rest? Vral'keth asked, voice flat. Outside, keeping your response teams busy. Jackson is probably making your fighter pilots regret their career choices. Yuki is definitely rewiring something important to explode at an inconvenient moment. The others are doing what humans do best. Making your carefully organized defenses into an absolute circus. Another explosion rocked the station. The lights flickered. That was Yuki, Petra said conversationally. Power grid, if I had to guess. We've got maybe 90 seconds before backup generators kick in. So, Commander. Do we do this easy, or do we get creative? Vral'keth's tactical training screamed at him to stall. Reinforcements would arrive. The humans would be overwhelmed. This was basic mathematics, but something Marcus had said earlier kept echoing in his mind. You think in patterns. Predictable, efficient, logical patterns. What if this was the pattern? What if the humans wanted him to call for reinforcements, to concentrate forces here while they did something else entirely? What is your actual objective? Vral'keth demanded. Extracting one prisoner does not justify this level of risk. Doesn't it? Marcus stepped closer, and despite being shorter and significantly less armored than Vral'keth, he somehow seemed larger. See, that's the fundamental difference between us. You calculate acceptable losses. We calculate acceptable risks. And for us, leaving a crew member behind is never acceptable. The risk is irrelevant. That is insanity. Yeah, probably. But it's our insanity, and it makes us extremely difficult to predict. Marcus glanced at Petra. How are we doing on time? 30 seconds to power restoration. We should move. Agreed. Marcus turned back to Vral'keth. Commander, I'm going to give you some free intelligence because honestly, I kind of like you. You're thorough, you ask good questions, and you haven't tried to torture me even once. Very professional. How generous, Vral'keth said dryly. Right? So here's the thing. Your Dominion is going to lose this war. Not because humans are stronger or smarter or better equipped. You'll lose because you fundamentally misunderstand what you're fighting. You think this is a territorial dispute. A resource conflict. Something that can be resolved through superior force and tactical excellence. The lights went out completely. Emergency systems bathed everything in red. Marcus continued speaking in the darkness, his voice steady. But for humans, this stopped being about territory the moment you attacked our colonies. You made it personal. And when you make things personal with humanity, you're not fighting a government or a military. You're fighting 8 billion angry primates, who spent their entire evolutionary history learning to kill things bigger, stronger, and meaner than themselves. The backup generators hummed to life. In the restored lighting, Vral'keth could see the humans already moving toward the exit, formations fluid and practiced despite their supposedly improvised nature. Every battle you win costs you resources you can't replace, Marcus said. Every battle we lose teaches us something new. We adapt faster than you can plan. We improvise better than you can calculate. And we absolutely, positively refuse to quit until either you're gone or we are. That's not a strategy, Commander. That's spite. That's improvisation. That's humanity. Wait, Vral'keth said, an idea forming. If I let you leave, will you deliver a message to your command? The humans paused. Petra's hand stayed on her weapon, but she nodded for him to continue. The Dominion Council believes this war can be won through attrition. They see your casualties and assume eventual victory is inevitable. Tell them they are wrong. Tell them that I, Commander Vral'keth, have interrogated your people and studied your tactics. Tell them that every day this war continues, we create more humans like you. More people who lose everything and decide that spite is a perfectly valid reason to keep fighting. Marcus actually looked surprised. You want peace? I want my people to survive. Your species has already cost us 3 fleets and 7 colonies. Not through superior technology, but through sheer, stubborn refusal to accept defeat. At this rate, even if we win, there will be nothing left of the Dominion to celebrate victory. Vral'keth straightened his posture, a gesture of respect in his culture. Humanity is not the greatest threat because of your weapons. You are the greatest threat, because you make everyone around you exhausted. Petra actually laughed at that. That might be the most accurate description of humans I've ever heard from an alien. Will you deliver my message? Vral'keth asked again. Marcus considered for a moment, then nodded. Yeah, okay. I'll pass it along. Can't promise they'll listen. Command is pretty invested in the whole fighting back thing. But I'll make sure your words get heard. That is all I can ask. Vral'keth stepped aside, gesturing to the door. Leave now, before I am forced to follow protocols that will result in unnecessary deaths on both sides. The humans moved as a unit, smooth and coordinated despite their ragtag appearance. As Marcus passed, he paused. For what it's worth, Commander, I hope they listen to you. This war is stupid, and we'd much rather go back to exploring the galaxy and making questionable decisions about untested technology. But if it continues, we will win. Not because we're better, but because we're too stubborn to do anything else. Then they were gone, disappearing into the smoke-filled corridors of the station. Vral'keth stood alone in the interrogation chamber, listening to the distant sounds of combat, explosions, and what might have been human laughter echoing through the ventilation systems, his communication implant activated. Commander, shall we pursue? Vral'keth thought about everything he'd learned. About spite and improvisation. About a species that turned farming equipment into weapons, and duct tape into starship repair material. About people who would assault a military station with 12 individuals, because leaving one person behind was unacceptable. No, he said finally. Let them go. And compile every piece of data we have on human tactics. I need to make a report to the Council. Sir, we cannot simply allow enemy combatants to escape. They are not escaping, Lieutenant. We are surviving. There is a difference. 2 hours later, after the humans had indeed left the station with minimal casualties on either side, mostly because they'd spent more time disabling systems than killing people, Vral'keth sat in his office writing his report. The conclusion wrote itself. Recommendation for immediate cessation of hostilities with humanity. Further conflict will result in Dominion collapse not through military defeat, but through resource exhaustion and tactical unpredictability. Human warfare doctrine is based on principles that our strategic models cannot adequately predict or counter. They do not fight to win. They fight to not lose. This distinction makes them effectively unstoppable within acceptable operational parameters. He paused, then added one final note. Human species classification should be updated from Category 4 threat to Category undefined. Attempting to categorize their danger level is itself dangerous, as it implies we understand their limitations. Current analysis suggests humanity has no practical limitations beyond their own imagination and spite. Both appear to be infinite resources. Vral'keth sent the report and leaned back in his chair, all 4 eye stalks focusing on the stars visible through his viewport. Somewhere out there, 12 humans in barely functional ships were laughing about their successful rescue mission, probably already planning their next impossible operation, and somewhere else, 8 billion more were looking at the war and collectively deciding that today seemed like a good day to be absolutely unreasonable. The universe, Vral'keth reflected, was about to learn what humanity had known for millennia. Never underestimate someone with nothing to lose and a really good idea of how to use duct tape.